Cotton Exchange Plaza in Flora, Mississippi, as well as the Men's Health and Women's Wellness Studio of
Men's Health and Women's Wellness of Mississippi Studios. You can see Sean's duck lips.
Yeah, I'm trying to just get up. So Lindsay's complaining about the camera. I'm sure I'll get complaints about it, but I'm going to have it the way I want it. So anyway.
I've done a lot better about that. Look, do y'all hear him? This is the Lindsay Beckham show, but I'm going to have it the way I want it.
Well,
you hear him? You hear him?
The camera, I'm going to have the camera away. And we hope you guys are having a great weekend. Hope you guys had a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and it's our last day before everybody goes back to work. And we decided to do a show because we are interested in this trial, and we have nothing else going on. Quite frankly, no, I had a lot going on today. I've been working, but I wanted to get in here and talk to you about the Donna Adelson trial in Tallahassee, Florida. And Lindsay has been following it intensively as well. So we're going to discuss all that and get into it.
Can I have the remote so I can make my camera look the way I want? Thank you.
Yep, sure. Anyway, so we are going to, we're going to go get into that. And again, I hope that you guys had a great Labor Day weekend. If you left around and don't want to find out this weekend, which a lot of people did, I'm sure there's always a huge law enforcement presence during the holiday weekends. You can reach me at onetextlaw.com. I specialize in criminal defense, DUIs. I do a lot of DUI work, and I can help you out if you are just bonding out of jail this morning, which is, I'm sure there's a lot of people doing that.
Drug deal's gone bad.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to talk to you about your case, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are very unhappy because they partied a little too hard this weekend and decided
maybe they hired someone to kill their son-in-law,
or they could have like this woman. But if that's what happened, just you can reach me at onetextlaw.com, and we will reach out to you as fast as we can. So anyway, yes. Lindsay,
we reach out quickly.
Yep,
we're good at that.
So we are going to talk about the Donna Adelson trial today, Lindsay. Right?
Yes. Lots of stuff happened. You were here with me last Monday when we talked about it, but lots of things have happened since then, and it's gotten quite exciting.
Okay, well, tell everybody, what was the last thing that happened? I just started reviewing it again today. I know the prosecution has rested.
They rested the end of the day on Friday, but we have now heard from the oldest brother, Rob. We have heard from Wendy's ex-boyfriend. Do you want to give kind of a really quick overview so people understand who the players are?
So what we're talking about here is the Donna Adelson trial. It is the murder of a man named Dan Markel, who is a Florida State University law professor. He and his wife, Wendi, both lawyers, both met in law school. They were married, living in Tallahassee while he was a law professor at that school. This is way back in 2014. So this case stretches over a decade now. And what happened was Wendi and Dan got a divorce like everybody else on the planet. and
Not everybody.
They were arguing over their kids and where they'd live. Wendi is from South Florida, where I grew up, and from the Miami area. And her family's there. They are a very wealthy dentist family. They run a lot of cosmetic dentist offices. If you know anything about Miami, that's huge there with all the the models and the plastic surgery. It's big. So they made millions. These people are loaded.
The Real Housewives of Miami live there.
They just made a ton of money. And so, Wendy's father's a famous dentist from Miami. Her brother is a periodontist, especially.
They do surgery. That's right. What I found out. I had to Google it. The periodontists actually do the surgical procedures.
Yeah. And so they do that, and they made a lot of money. So So Wendi, though, decided not to become a dentist and went to law school. That's where she met Dan. They lived up there, and they were getting a divorce. Well, part of the divorce was that she had to stay in Tallahassee because that's where his job as a law professor was.
And that's where they got married and made their family home. That's where they, brought their children home when they had these two boys. So it makes sense that, his job is there. He doesn't want to leave. And that was a problem.
Yeah, and Miami is really far from Tallahassee. That's like a different part of the world.
8-hour drive, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's just that's what I call.
It's like night and day.
Tallahassee's kind of part of the South, and Miami is not.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it is a different world up there. So it'd be hard if you have kids to kind of shuffle them back and forth that kind of distance. And so that's what Dan.
And kids have to go to school, right? And I mean, you can't go to school 1 week in Tallahassee and then 1 week in Miami. It doesn't really work that way.
No, it wouldn't. So, and Dan was a good father. Wanted to see his kids. You can't blame the guy for that. And
I mean, he turned down $1 million. They offered him $1 million.
Well, they didn't end up offering, but I'll get
to
that.
They did. He turned it down outright.
Oh, that's
yeah.
okay.
We talked about that on the show last Monday.
Well, they had so they tried to come up. Apparently, Lindsay remembers that better than I do. They came up with a bunch of ways to get Dan to move or let the kids move to South Florida with Wendi.
But he said
One was
absolutely
offering
not.
$1 million. He didn't take that. There were other things I think they tried to do to coerce him, and it just didn't work. They tried to make his life a living hell. That was one of the ways they were thinking about.
So much as to like claim he's Jewish. They're going to claim that they're going to take the kids and put them in Catholic Sunday school and hire these teachers to come in and catch them up on the Bible according to Catholics, which would have been his worst nightmare.
Yeah. He's like, don't make them Christian.
I
Like,
mean, I felt like Jews
understand.
are Christian. You know what I mean?
No. Well,
he was
a
practicing, a very
Orthodox.
Orthodox. That's the word.
He was.
Orthodox.
Yeah, he's very. Hey, look, in all respect. I mean, he wants his kids to be raised in his religion, and I think that the Adelsons are Jewish too.
They're Jewish too.
So they just all of a sudden, I'm going to convert to Christianity.
Well, it was anything to make him go along with what they wanted.
So
I mean, there are emails from the mom, the matriarch who's on trial, Donna, to Wendi saying, you need to put on the best show of your life. You've got to act. You've got to make him believe these things. We're going to do this, and we're going to make him so upset that he will allow you to bring the kids to Miami.
Okay. Yeah. And so that didn't work. And well, they decided, okay, they're going to go all in. And what they did was, so Charles Adelson is Wendy's brother, who's again, also a dentist.
Very honest.
Right. Same though. I mean, dentist, same in that field, right? It's like saying someone's a doctor with a specialty, but and so they decide he's dating some lady named Katie Manacabal. I can never say her last name. She's Filipino.
McManaball.
And how he met this chick, I can't figure out, because he's this rich Jewish family in Miami, and she's like she's like gang connected. Like she's like the mafia connected. She's connected to the Latin Kings, I think, and maybe some other gangs. And she was dating one of the guys. I think it was Garcia or Rivera. I can't remember which one was her boyfriend. Garcia. And they were involved. These two men were involved in Latin Kings. Well, so she was Katie became what I like to call the bag man in the situation, where she arranged the money and the hookup to these two guys, Rivera and Garcia, between the Adelsons, who's this rich family. They don't know gang members, they don't know that world. And so she kind of was a conduit between them.
Which is always, it's been so strange to me that how was Charlie dating this girl? How did they?
That's what I was saying. I don't know how you get hooked up with this chick. Like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, just not what you would have thought. Something like that. And who was sleeping with, I think, Garcia and Charlie at the same time. So
yes, Garcia's she's got two kids with 2 or 3 with Garcia. And so this was somebody she knew well.
Yeah.
It seems like she'd always been in love with. I think Charlie was just somebody to pass
the rich guy to hang out with.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. It's unfortunately for him. But so they hired the Adelsons hired Rivera and Garcia to go kill Dan, which eventually they do in 2014. And I think is shooting him in his car. Is that right?
Yes, they followed him. They followed him to drop his kids off at daycare, and then to the gym, and then back home, where he never even got out of his car. They shot him. And
so they go up to Tallahassee, and I think they would try to make one attempt, and then they don't do it. And another attempt, they do it. They kill him. They turn off their phones for a moment, and then turn it back on, go back to Florida. Well, the authorities eventually start using like cell phone tracking evidence, realize that these guys had gone up there. They had other evidence that came in.
They're in a rental car, and they tracked the rental car through different cameras throughout town.
And they're developed as suspects and whatnot. And so the case goes on. Again, this is 2014, so we're talking about 11 years ago, where Rivera and Garcia do get convicted. Now, Rivera pleads guilty in exchange for testimony against Garcia, which Garcia goes to jail for life. Katie Manacabal, she goes to trial and gets convicted for life in prison. And Rivera's got 19 years as a cooperating state's witness. Well, then now here they go after Charlie. And Charlie in 2023, he gets convicted. And so now they're on finally to Donna, who's the mother, the 75-year-old mother. That's kind of, they're trying to state is portraying as like the brains behind the whole operation, because she's the one who controls the whole family. So we are here on her trial, and a lot of the evidence they have around her is there was, I believe, some meeting with some undercover agents where they discussed like paying more money.
Well, that's what they called the bump. So yeah, they were undercover agents, and they went to her and said, we're going to need more money. And then they had phones tapped, and they wanted to see how she responded. But I think a lot of the evidence is the fact that once they find out who the killers are, then they make this connection with Katie, who was dating Charlie, who leads back to Dan, the man that was murdered. So they've got that, and then they start to dig even deeper and find out that this mom, Donna Adelson, from the dentistry business, was writing checks to Katie. And she never worked there.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's that's a little bit incriminating, I would think.
Right. And then they also have all these wiretaps and these phone calls and these emails between, back and forth between her and Wendi. And like, obviously the things that she was saying, like, let's make his life a living hell. Like, I hate, she called him horrible names. Just, you could tell that she really despised her son-in-law.
Yeah, I mean, apparently so. Enough to have him killed just so the kids and her daughter can move back to Miami. Well, here we are, where we are now in the trial is there's been 6 days so far, 26 witnesses, hours of undercover recordings. The prosecution has finally rested. I think they rested on Friday. Is that
Friday
right?
afternoon, at the end of the day, yeah.
They've laid out everything, and they believe connects 75-year-old Donna Adelson to this murder. So on Tuesday, tomorrow, it's going to be the defense's turn, and they're expected to take about 4 to 6 days. And Donna Adelson may or may not testify. We'll get into that, the mechanics of that. I
believe later. She will.
Right. And I want to discuss that in like the next segment. We can kind of discuss the benefits, the pros and cons of that and whatnot. But one of the 2 witnesses in this segment we'll get into is that, so they had 2 what's called a jailhouse informant, is what I've always called. When I was a prosecutor, I was an assistant DA for about 10 years in Hinds County, and you'd have a jailhouse informant. These guys happen a lot, right? They do. And so 2 of them were.
And can you ever really trust them? That's
the thing, and I'll explain that. So there's 2 of them, Patricia Bird and Drina Bernhardt. Now, Patricia claims Donna admitted her role while in jail, which she's in jail waiting the trial. So people pre-trial incarceration. Saying that the plot was about keeping her grandkids, but it wasn't supposed to go that far. That's what she tells Patricia Bird.
Yeah, I think that's BS.
And then there's another jailhouse informant, Drina Bernhardt, who said Donna actually wrote her a script of fake testimony, offered her bribes, everything from 10 grand to a grand piano if she would repeat that in court. That she wanted to repeat this false testimony that she's telling her to do, telling this jailhouse informant. So that's what the state puts on these 2 jailhouse informants to, evidence that she's guilty, obviously. Now, I'll tell you something, just from personal experience, you got to be really careful with the jailhouse informant, Lindsay. Like that is, there's actually a jury instruction in Mississippi that you automatically get as a defendant when you're representing the defendant. Because I've done this when I've represented the defendant too. And it's basically that they must be. Jailhouse informant test must be taken with great care, caution, and suspicion. I mean, that's what this instruction says. Great care, caution, and suspicion.
Some more information about these 2.
Yeah, right. You'll get sure. Like, but I just wanted to lay that out there. Just so when you're the state and you're calling these jailhouse informants, you just know that. And I assume Florida has some derivative of that kind of instruction, the great care, caution, and suspicion instruction. So the jury's going to read that instruction and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to have to look at this witness's testimony under a lens of great care, caution, suspicion, other than I would another witness's testimony."
But Donna has testified about these 2 before in her bond hearing. Did you go back and watch her testimony from the bond hearing?
No, go ahead. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so she testified in her bond hearing when they were trying to get her out of jail until her trial. And I'm not sure what year this took place. Obviously, it's been in the last little bit. When Charlie was convicted.
She was arrested in 2023.
So it's been obviously at some point since then she's been in jail, and she goes and testifies that these 2 women had like assaulted her in the jail, and they knew where the cameras were. They would come in when she was in the shower, threaten her. One of them had twisted her arm. She had to go see a doctor about it, and that they had been making her order them these boxes through the commissary program and get them food, those types of things. So these women she's testified against and she's made allegations against prior to them coming in this trial and testifying against her. So that also gives them ammunition to want to testify against her because they're angry that she said those things.
Let me ask you this though: was that after the state had their testimony, like that was given to her in discovery? They were going to
I'm not sure. I just know
that would
be
interesting to know. I would think that it'd be interesting to know that whether she'd already had information they were going to testify against her, and then therefore she came up with that. Now, I'm not saying I believe these jailhouse informants, because you got to look like you got to be really stupid to confess to the person in the cell next to you. Mind you, it happens a lot. There's a lot of idiots out there, and they do this. And believe me, I've called these witnesses so many times, and where they've done that, and it's just every time I'm like, "Did he really say that?" But then there's other motivations for it too, and I want to get back into that because I think it's really interesting.
It was in March of 25, so it had to be after, I imagine.
And we'll get into it. I want to get into all the jailhouse stuff, and then the other stuff that Lindsay wanted to get into about the whole stuff next segment here on the Lindsay Beckham Show here on this lovely Labor Day weekend. Which, by the way, Lindsay, the weather has been wonderful. I know sometimes we actually sound like the weather show here, but it was good this weekend. It was not super hot, and it was fun. We went and watched college football this weekend, it's great to have the football season back. and that's gets
Woo!
everybody. Yeah, I know you're super excited. Okay, guys out there, it's awesome. College football is back. It's NFL starts.
I don't mind
Sunday.
it. I mean, it's not terrible. Obviously, I'm not as into it as you football enthusiasts, but I mean, it's definitely it's fun to drink and watch football.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Something to do on the weekend. So, it was, and I went to Ohio State for undergrad, and we beat Texas, and so that was a fun thing. Saw the Mississippi State fans did beat Southern Miss, and Ole Miss just killed Georgia State. We watched a little bit of that. So
Ole Miss and State are undefeated, and Alabama hasn't won a game. Let's hold on to that for the next week because it doesn't happen very often.
No, Alabama lost to an unranked Florida State too, so it makes it even better. Them sucking.
It really does.
They're so enjoyable for the whole country. I think everybody can get behind Alabama losing, except for the Alabama fans that never went to Alabama. That's what I call them.
The words "roll tide" make me sick to my stomach.
Right, exactly. But here we are. We're discussing the Donna Adelson trial, and we were getting into the jailhouse informants. And what I was trying to explain was that when you're the state and you put on a witness that hears a confession in the jail while you're waiting to go to trial, it's called it's a jailhouse informant, and the jury automatically in Mississippi, I'm sure Florida has something very similar, gets a jury instruction that says that you look on the jury's supposed to look on that testimony with great care, caution, and suspicion, something around that language. And so when they look at that, they're like, okay, what the first question, Lindsay, what you're going to ask is, what are the motivations of these witnesses to testify? Because they're already in jail and they're generally not good Samaritans. So they're probably doing this for something. They're going to get some
I'm
kind
sure
of
there's some sort of something that's been promised to them, even if it's not a deal that they've worked out on paper. I'm sure there's something they believe that they might be getting in the future.
Yeah, I mean that's what you do. I remember when I was prosecuting, I'd call those witnesses. Some prosecutors do it this way. They'll make a deal. Let's say somebody is charged with like a co-defendant in a murder case, and they'll say, okay, we'll plead you to 20 years manslaughter, and that's the deal that we make. And so when they testify and they're cross-examined by the defense is like, what are you going to get? And they're like, I'm getting 20 years for this. And so the jury's like, whoa, this dude's walking with only 20 years. So I never used to do that. I just used to say, look, your testimony would be good for you.
They'll say whatever
later on.
They'll say whatever you want them to say if it's going to get them out of jail quicker.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason for the jury instruction. And the jury kind of knows that. So if you got a case where you got to rely on their testimony, that's bad for you. Now, not in this case, they're relying on a lot of other things.
I didn't think they were the two witnesses out of that 26 or whatever that were the most important anyway. No, I think there were other ones who really kind of put the nail in the coffin for Donna.
I agree with you. I think I almost don't know if I'd recall them. I
just probably would have left them off.
It just in my experience, having done that several times, it muddies the water. Mm-hmm. It gives the defense something because you're always going to look good as the defense on cross-examination when you got a jailhouse informant on the witness stand.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example because you, Lindsay, is also my assistant as well as my girlfriend and co-host sometimes. And she works for me, and we tried a capital murder case earlier this year in Hinds County where the jury hung up. So that was good. That's like a win for the defense. Mm-hmm. And they had a
because our client was innocent.
Right. Yes, he is innocent. And they had a witness who was a cooperating co-defendant who had made a deal. And it got so when I was my chance to cross-examine her, it got so bad for her that she admitted to actually, I asked her, like, are you a liar? And she said, yeah, I am, which was the first time I've ever got a witness to actually say that on the stand. It looked really bad for the state because that was their main witness. And that's what I think caused the jury to hang up on that case because her testimony was so bad and she was so biased. And she was
the one who was guilty.
Yeah. And she'd got a deal where she just basically walked out of the courtroom. And we're talking about a capital murder case, the one that we tried. And so it is when when you're hanging your hat as the state, as the prosecution on a jailhouse or a cooperating co-defendant, either or, it's tough. It is always tough. You got to have other stuff. You can. I like to. They can be like sprinkles on ice cream, but otherwise, I will take the cooperating co-defendant before the random jailhouse dude that sits there and says, "Oh yeah, man, I just heard Willie whatever tell me that he killed this person." It just always sounds so ridiculous most of the time. At least that's the way I thought about it, and I feel like the jury sees that and senses that. So, but they called him anyway. And so, Lindsay, you actually were really listening to some of this other testimony. What happened with there was now Wendi Adelson, who's the daughter of Donna being on trial. Wendi, Dan's widow now, I guess, or widow ex-wife, boyfriend after that the marriage testified too. And what was he testifying to? Because I know you really followed that one.
Yes. So he testified to the fact that he was dating Wendi and that he had met the parents. He was around the kids. He had even met Dan a few times. He talked about how Wendi it's all she ever wanted to talk about was the divorce and how Dan was such a bad guy.
That's like a crappy
Wouldn't let her-
relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you're like, do I really, is this about me?
Yeah, exactly. But
Was he the first guy after the divorce?
I believe so.
Oh,
But
there you
they
go.
dated a little under a year. And so when this plan finally came to fruition, these guys drove from Miami to Tallahassee to kill Dan.
Yeah.
It was during a time, the first time they went there to kill him. It didn't end up happening. They lost him. They were trailing him. They lost him. The second time it did happen. But both times that they went to kind of put this plan into motion, the boyfriend of Wendi was out of town, was actually leaving to go out of town, and would have been by himself. There would have been no alibi for him. And so the second time, the time the murder actually occurred, he changed his plans at the very last minute, and he ended up leaving town the night before to go to Tennessee alone. But had he not done that, he would have been in the vicinity of Dan's house on his way out of town at the time of the murder. So he started to look at this thinking, oh, well, that's odd. And looked back at, once he found out there was a plan prior to that, he realized, oh, wait, I was going out of town that time too. Well, then he realizes that the rental vehicle that these hitman used was one that looked very similar to the car that he owned. So it's almost as though he was the scapegoat. He was the one they were going to blame it on should something have gone awry.
Yeah, like they're all trying to come up with something. I mean, it makes sense in terms of Wendi got she got the most to gain from this murder. She's able to go home. Donna just, I guess, gains control over her daughter and her grandkids, which is what she wants. But Wendi gets to get away from Tallahassee. And by the way, I mean, if you've been to Tallahassee and you've been to Miami, and I guess I'm biased because I'm from Miami, I'd much rather live in Miami than I would Tallahassee. So maybe that's part of it. She wanted to go home and be around. I mean, I imagine Wendi didn't have to work if she didn't want to, as wealthy as this family is, it seems like.
Although she is an attorney.
She's an attorney. Yeah, that's it. She is an attorney. That's how she met poor Dan, and
they met online on a dating website.
Did they? It was not in law school?
It was not. No, they met online. But yeah, and
that's another bad advertisement for online dating.
Yeah. But
swipe left.
Yeah. But, and I think even more so, I think that's pretty damning testimony right there. But I think even more so than that is the older brother.
On the Lindsay Beckham show on this Labor Day Monday, where no one else is working except for us today. So
maybe that means people are actually listening to
maybe you'll listen to the show if you're interested in true crime as much as Lindsay is. You might be interested. And I do it by default just because it's like the one thing I know. Like
more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could do like a history show, but true crime seems to be one of the things that I kind of know a lot about.
Also, live streaming on YouTube, your YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, our Facebook pages, the law firm Facebook page. So you'd rather see us than listen. That's where you can do that.
We're on there. We went down for a moment. We had to refix the stream, but it is back up and you can still catch it there. So we did that at the break. Yeah, there's some technical difficulties there, but we fixed that. But right now,
probably user error.
Yeah, probably user error, I'm sure. So now we're back talking about the Donna Adelson trial, where the prosecution has rested and the defense will start tomorrow. Their case is expected to last 4 to 6 days. The big question we got Lindsay, and I wanted to save this to this is our longer segment to discuss this because it gets pretty interesting, is will Donna testify? Is 75-year-old Donna Adelson going to take the stand? The first thing I'll say, and I'll kick it back to you, is the general, as you know, because you've tried a case with me as a defense lawyer or defense lawyer's assistant, and the general consensus is you don't want your client to take the stand. And the reason you don't is because it's never good for them, because they always will mess up. Because, I mean, generally, let's be honest here, a lot of times they're guilty, and when you're guilty, you tend to lie. And when you lie, you get caught in one lie and it just spirals from there. And it's really
snowballs.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very rare that it's going to be a case where the defendant's testimony is going to help them. Now, let me give you an example. I tried another case last summer in a self-defense case where the guy was innocent. You remember that? I told you about that case. And we didn't even have him take the stand because we just felt like he was kind of one of those guys that would get it's a nerve-wracking experience to take the witness stand. If you've ever done it, I've actually had to do it because just as part of a case before some evidence I handled or whatever, it's not, if you're not used to that environment, it is a very scary thing. And people freak out, even if you didn't do it. They tense up, they answer questions incorrectly. And
good lawyers know how to make them tense up. They know how to make them feel uncomfortable and intimidated.
it's just, I mean, it's adversarial. That's the best way to put it. And it's gonna, and even if you're telling 100% the truth, you're gonna get tripped up. You just are, and it's tough to handle that. Now, especially if you did it, then you're really gonna get tripped up because you're usually telling a BS story, and that's when a lot of times, the rule of cross-examination is to ask yes or no questions. I was taught in a different way from a friend of mine you've met, over the DA's office. And he taught me, let them talk because they'll always lie. And then you've got them.
Let them keep going. They'll hang themselves.
Yeah. And so I kind of do a mix of the two because they usually will. And so that's the problem you got right here with Donna Adelson. She takes a stand. To me, it looks like she's obviously guilty. Like, it just seems like
I believe she fully intends on taking a stand, though.
Yeah, no, I think she's one of those, she seems like one of those defense, Lizzie, that's so like ego driven that like, I'm going to get up there and tell the jury the way it is, and they're going to listen to me. Like one of those people, and you're like, no, they're probably not.
I think her defense attorneys are also trying to rely on the fact that this is a grandma and she's kind of old and feeble looking now. And they're going to see her as someone who just loves her grandchildren. And that's going to cause some sympathy within the jury. I do not think that's going to be the case. I think that pretty much everyone is looking at her like, we know you're guilty, and that you think that because you have money, you're above the law and that you can get away with these things. But I think what else has been really interesting, Sean, is that throughout the trial thus far, through the state's case, them putting their case on, the defense attorneys have gone back and forth almost as though they are blaming Charlie or Wendi, like, oh, they had more knowledge, they knew more about this, they were more involved than our client. And it's like, that makes it even stranger because these are her children.
Yeah, I've listened to some of the breakdown of that. Apparently, the state may have made a deal, try to actually get Donna to testify against Wendi.
I think they're coming after Harvey and Wendi. I do think that Harvey, the husband, Donna's husband, and Wendi, the daughter who was married to Dan, who was murdered, will be arrested and tried for this murder.
It's possible. I think that with Wendi, it's going to be tough because of this immunity thing to break through that. We'll see.
But that was only on things that she testified to.
I know.
And she didn't testify to anything that made her look guilty.
I understand that, but her defense lawyers are going to make it seem like, whoever defends her are going to make it seem like there's a natural connection between those things. And then it's going to create an appellate situation if she is allowed to go to trial, get convicted. It's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be, I guess the only reason I think it could happen, and I would be inclined to agree with you, is because of the high profile nature. If this were not a high profile case, ain't no way in heck they'd do it. Like, they're just not going to do it as a state, take that risk to then the case getting bumped on appeal. I just don't see it. This, though, they might be under so much public pressure now at this point that they'll just, a lot of times when you're under public pressure, you make really stupid legal decisions. I mean, it happens all the time. Like, really, really dumb ones. I've seen it for years and years, unfortunately, that I think a good example of that, our friend Anthony Fox getting indicted. There was, at that time, there was all this public pressure about police brutality in the wake of George Floyd and all that kind of crap. And I think that, people make political decisions in the DA's office a lot. Unfortunately, I've seen it time and again. And I think this would be something I could see that happening, where we've got to indict Wendi Adelson, because otherwise whoever's I think they're called the state attorney's office of Florida, is not going to get reelected. So you're probably right. They probably will do it based on politics.
Initially, I didn't know. I couldn't decide. Did she know about this? Did she have anything to do with it? But after I have seen the entire case that the prosecution has put on here in Donna's trial, I think she absolutely knew. And I think she definitely played a part.
Oh, I think she 100% knew. I mean, there's no way they didn't. I mean, if I was going to kill my sister's husband, Manny, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just letting you know, if you're listening to this, Jasmine listens. But I mean, I'd be the first one. We'd come up with it together. I mean, you know how close her and I are. We would come up with the plan and probably not tell anybody else. Like, there would be no way she wouldn't know and I wouldn't know, and we both wouldn't have been in on it. There's just no way. So I don't know. I know. So that's why I believe she was definitely involved. 100% she was involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. Obviously, I'm sure Charlie loved his sister, but did he love her enough, that much, that he is going to put his neck on the line, spend the rest of his life in jail to kill her husband, who she's divorcing, just because they can't agree on where the kids are going to live?
Yeah, no, true. I mean, and also think about, that made me think of this too, Lindsay, about the Wendi thing. Think about how ridiculous the defense is on that, or how easy, let me put it better, how the state is going to be able to counteract that. Ladies and gentlemen, I just didn't know my brother and my mom tried to kill my husband. They didn't tell me. Oh my God. I mean, it sounds ridiculous that she wouldn't have known. Like, they were just trying to protect her, even though this was for her benefit. Like they just
Right.
didn't tell her at all. Like what if she said, no, I don't want you to do that. Don't kill him. Like that's messed up. He's the father of my children. Like they're going to have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Like, I don't want that. I'd rather live in Tallahassee than have my children grow up without a father. How about that? Like, what if she says that? I mean, that's a legitimate thing. I would think most normal people would say. But no, they obviously got with her, in my opinion. I don't know this for a fact based on what I'm seeing. And she hated him and they all hated him. And this was a coordinated effort. I would agree with that. Whether now that's going to survive appellate review, that's another thing. Like down the line after in the event that she's convicted, I mean.
And it gets appealed.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be another, I think, thing to it. So we'll see on that. But as to like said, Donna taking the stand, I mean, the problem, I guess the thing is the problem. She's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So if she doesn't take the stand, then everything the prosecution has said, that's kind of, some of it's kind of weak. I mean, some of it's stronger than others, but it all goes unrebutted. I mean, she has to explain away, like, why were you getting on a plane to Vietnam?
That's exactly what I was about to say, because
like,
that's what came out too at the very end of the state's prosecution's testimony that they put on. That was one of the last things. We were talking to the investigators, and of course they arrested her in the airport. Mm-hmm. And we have all the phone calls between her and the people that she's attempting to get the visa from, and she's wanting this 3-month visa, and she has to have it expedited, and she needs to go to a country where they have those laws where they can't
no extradition.
Yeah. So obviously that makes her look even more guilty. She's selling all of her things on Facebook Marketplace, and it doesn't add up. And so how do you explain away all of that?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, she's got to talk about she's gonna have to explain away the wiretaps too. Like, how do you explain that away? But I think to me, like, her explanations also suck too. Like, I don't know, is it better for her not to say anything about it, just prey on, and the defense lawyers push reasonable doubt? Because I mean, this is her explanation of the wiretaps. Oh, I was confused, I was scared, I was speaking vaguely. I mean, you sound ridiculous. Like, the state is going to crush her the minute she says anything like that. They're going to rip her into a million pieces. I know it. I've done it before. It's fun. Trust me. And like, they're going to kill her. And it's so like, that's where I would be concerned. She's going to get destroyed on everything. The only thing they could hope for, what her testimony is going to help her, would be she's old. I mean, I'm just going to put it, she is old. Like, ladies, look how old she is. I mean, if you're going for that, that's your whole defense, which maybe be the best one that they've got.
I mean, I think that's all they've got.
And she's old.
What I have noticed about the defense attorneys is that they have barely questioned any of these witnesses on cross-examination. They'll ask 1 or 2 questions and then they're done, because I think they don't have anything there's no defense. Like, they've put on no defense whatsoever thus far. And so I think that's what they are relying on, is the fact that she looks old and she loves her grandkids, and please take pity on this poor woman.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think your best strategy as a defense lawyer is that she's old. She's 75. She's near the end of her life anyway. Most likely, people can live to 90 or whatever. That that it was her daughter took advantage of her as her mother, who and
you got to throw Wendi under the bus to do that.
Well, I mean, they're already doing that.
Yeah,
during the trial. So I think you could say that the daughter was taking advantage of her elderly mother, and her mother and mothers love their children, and they'll do anything for their children. And she's old. Don't send her to prison. And that's what I would go with. But we will try to finish it up on the last segment here on the